So hello everyone.
No, they're not watching.
We are live in the For Her group this evening, talking all about anxiety this evening. Unfortunately, we were going to have a slant on suicide, but unfortunately Pookie can't join us. So she does send her apologies because her little ones are poorly. So I hope they get well soon. But it's nice to have Vicky here with me this evening.
Hi.
So it's nice to see you, Vicky. Would you just introduce yourself and give everyone a little bit of a background into sort of your life and where you are now, really?
Sure. Currently, I've just literally finished my third year of my psychology degree. It was a big journey doing something like a psychology degree, because I started off like a few years ago with quite severe postnatal depression, and it's taken me a long time to be able to do things like leave the house and have the confidence to drive and simple things like go shopping by myself. But I kind of bumped into Serena again at a TEDx conference, and where I did a talk on making friends with my anxiety. So, and it was amazing to see her again there. Get my words in.
We literally met a few years back, didn't we, at a business brew meeting, literally, and it was so strange we've been friends on Facebook, and so you kind of see each other's life and stuff like that, don't you? But it's really it was quite a shock, really. It was like, oh hi, how are you? And how did you find that? Because obviously dealing with anxiety, to be the person to then get on stage and actually talk about your anxiety must be a total sort of smack in the face. You're kind of almost saying to anxiety, sod you, you know, I'm getting up in front of a few hundred people, and you know,
200.
Ella, that's enough now, darling. That's being rude.
Well, it was a really strange experience, because my talk was about making friends with anxiety, so learning to work with it and try and gain some of the positives from it rather than be afraid of it and run away from it. But what was really interesting was actually before doing the talk, I had to do an awful lot of work on my anxiety to be able to kind of get to the point of getting up on stage, because that was actually I think the hardest bit was going into the backstage bit.
Yeah, was that the bit where I suppose you kind of, it's the before and the actual time around talking that is the issue, isn't it? The actual lead up to it and the
So Pookie was doing her talk just before I went on stage, and I can't remember an awful lot of her talk because I was so nervous at that point. But it was lovely because the people backstage were really supportive, and they got me mic'd up, and they kind of gave me encouragement, and actually was able to step out and actually go out on the stage, which was a big thing.
And how did you get from the point, obviously you said before that you were at that point where you couldn't leave the house or just do like general daily things, so how do you get to the point from being in that situation to actually now being able to get up on stage? Is it, you've talked about making friends with your anxiety and kind of seeing the positives, but how did you manage to do that? Because presumably that's not an overnight thing, is it?
No, it's a really long process. So, and it's tiny little baby steps. So I can remember the feeling of, you know, having a choice. I can either give up and not make anything of my life, or I can take responsibility for how I'm feeling and start to build myself up. And it starts with tiny steps, like leaving the house to go for a really short walk, or going to a new social group, going to a women's networking group, going to basically anything that scared me a little bit. because what I learned to do was to kind of accept and tolerate. Each time I pushed myself, I could accept and tolerate a slightly higher level of anxiety and still manage to do what I needed to do without running away. So it's kind of slowly building up resilience and not being afraid of being worried.
I suppose it's like that with anything though, isn't it? It's kind of that if you've got that really big goal in mind, it's breaking that big goal into really small manageable chunks that kind of are progressive. So basically you sort of progress as you go along. And I suppose now you know, after that TEDx talk, you kind of look back and think, wow, you know, the journey that I've been on is just absolutely crazy.
Yeah. It's immense. But with each step forward, what I find is sometimes there's a little step back as well. So one thing that I didn't expect, that actually really did take me by surprise, was how tired I was after the TED talk, and how I think my body and my brain had used so much energy that I was really quite depleted afterwards. But actually I still see that as part of a positive process, because it's a bit, I see it quite similar to, you know, when you build up a muscle, you know, initially when you do your training, you get a period where it aches and it's uncomfortable.
And like that no pain, no gain kind of thing, isn't it?
Exactly.
When you kind of have to have that. I think as well that kind of that it's like with any event. Like obviously we do a lot of events and stuff like that, and you know, you talked about postnatal depression earlier. You know, us like that build up to having the baby, and once you have the baby, you then have a downward spiral. You know, even if you don't suffer from postnatal depression, there's still like emotions and hormones and stuff there, isn't there? And the same with, you know, people have like post wedding blues, don't they, and different things like that, because they've built up for so long this sort of, you know, they're running on adrenaline almost, and then they have a proper downer when they then kind of, it's all done. So I suppose that was the same for you.
When your body starts to recover, your body starts to consolidate what you've just done, and you kind of need time to rest and reflect on what you've achieved before then you set yourself the next little target, before then I set myself the next little goal. And I think my challenge for myself is to realize that that feeling of being worried about the next step, the next goal, is not going to go away. But each time I learned to cope with it, and I learned to process it that little bit better, so that actually it doesn't stop me anymore.
Yeah. So for those who didn't, because obviously me and I went with my operations manager Kerry, and we sat and obviously watched TEDx, and it was so inspirational. But for those who were watching who weren't there or didn't see it, can you just give us a little insight into what you spoke about?
Yeah, sure. It was oh gosh, I was remembering now. I rehearsed it
on the spot there.
I spent so long rehearsing it, and it was in my head so solidly, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, what did I talk about? It was about how I started off as battling with my anxiety and being quite ashamed of my anxiety, and then through an experience with a minister at my church, started to question how I viewed the world, started to question the fact that I saw myself as worthless, and I saw myself as not being interesting. I just began to question all that, and to see through that, to see that maybe I didn't see myself in the same way that the rest of the world saw me. because anxiety is one of these things that there is research that shows that it literally changes how people perceive the world. It literally changes how people view other people. So if I'm feeling very anxious, I'm more likely to see somebody as threatening or rejecting, where in reality they may be completely not. That's a bit of latest research there.
I think perspective is a very it has a massive it's massive when it comes to any mental illness, I think, isn't it? That perception of you know, what you think the world, how you think the world's perceiving you, to actually the reality of it.
Yeah.
Which obviously when you're, you know, dealing with anxiety or depression, or, you know, even to the point of suicidal thoughts and stuff, that is all to do with that misinterpretation and that kind of obscurity of the reality, isn't it? That's the thing.
Oh, completely.
So did you worry in terms of thinking about that? Did you have any preconceptions of what the people would have thought of you doing that TEDx talk, I suppose?
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
There is the I suppose the nature of my talk as well. I was revealing something quite personal about myself, to do with, you know, to do with my anxiety. And one of my ways of viewing anxiety is that it's a survival tool. At heart, it's a survival tool. At heart, it's part of the fight or flight reflex. So it's designed to try and stop you being eaten by animals and things like that, on the predators, and so you can get away and survive. But it doesn't actually know the difference between something that wants to eat you or being slightly worried at a party. So it'll trigger off the same anxiety fight or flight response to a real threat or an imagined threat. I've lost my thread there.
So I suppose it doesn't matter what situation you're in, your brain almost reacts and your body reacts in the same way. Because I've never suffered from anxiety as such. I mean, obviously everyone has a slight level of it, don't they? In situations that you're not comfortable with, there's something there that kind of scares the bejeebies out of you, basically. But I think, you know, I'm a depression sufferer, and kind of, I think any mental illness, it's kind of that. I've lost my train of thought now. What's going on a Monday evening? Oh dear. No, that is the thing, isn't it? It's that kind of, your brain still associates things with the past, or is it associates, you know, that kind of same feeling with another situation that might not be the same as the previous, or nowhere near as daunting, or, you know, sad, or, you know, for example, using an example for me, you know, I had depressive feelings of, you know, when I went through my divorce, you know, when a relative died, but then, you know, just lately I've had issues with someone who I thought was a friend, and I felt that same level of, like, grievance. But actually the two situations, or, you know, the worst situations are so much more worse than this, you know, recent situation. But I think you kind of, your body still goes, hang on a minute, you're starting to feel down, the world's ending, do you know what I mean? And you suddenly just plummets you, like, into
it's crazy. It's horrible feeling. I mean, I can remember one of the just occurred to me on the TED talk, one of the problems with anxiety is the perception that, you know, for me anyway, my perception that I knew what other people were thinking of me, and realizing I didn't actually know that at all. So my anxious thoughts and feelings, I kind of believed that other people thought badly of me. Other people saw me as incapable, and it's realizing that I don't have that ability. I'm a psychology student, but I can't read minds.
No.
Oh no, I broke my crayon.
The world's ended because the 5-year-old has broken her crayon.
Surely that just means she's got 2.
Yeah, you've got 2 now. See? Positive outlook, you see? Vicky says you've got 2 crayons now. Lucky you, because she's smiling. So
she's got twice as many crayons as she started with.
Yes, that is a good analogy, really, isn't it? It's all about looking at that sort of glass half empty or half full scenario. And I think
exactly,
it's very easy to say, isn't it, when you can. I know, for example, if you say it to other people, you can easily say, oh, but look at the bright side, but when it's you and you've got that horrible person on your shoulder going, but life is so bad,
and you are terrible and you are awful, and
you kind of can't shrug it off, whereas you look at other people and you can kind of, I give advice to people all the time and say, this is, look at it positive that way, this is, but when it's your own stuff, it's quite difficult to do that. We're our own worst enemies, really, aren't we?
Oh gosh, and if somebody else was standing there saying the things to you that you were saying in your head, or I was saying in my head, then I would probably be quite at my right to give them a bit of a slap. If somebody was standing next to me saying the things that I was imagining that people were saying about me, people would be horrified.
Yeah. And I think that's that thing, it comes back. We've talked a lot on the chat show. A few weeks back we did one on mindset, and I think it is I think a lot of mental illness and a lot of anxiety, suicidal thoughts, anything in that bracket is always down to your own self-worth and how you actually perceive yourself. And it's amazing how you can speak to hundreds of people and they say how amazing you are, what things you're doing and that, but still that inner voice is saying, yeah, but you could do this better, or you could be this better, or and it just like you beat, for example, tonight I'll probably get off talking to you tonight and be like, oh, I should have got Ella to bed, I should have done this, that didn't.
Well, the whole should.
Yeah, and that is the thing, no matter that we're actually having a nice chat and it's a lovely evening and the birds are singing and, like we're alive and she's healthy and I'm healthy and, you don't think of all those good things, do you?
No.
You're like trapped in that horrific, nastiness on yourself, basically.
Oh no, I forgot to do next. Mummy.
I think one of the things for me with anxiety is what I used to do is I used to enter a situation in which it's normal to feel a bit worried, a bit nervous, a bit anxious. So like you walk into a room full of people you've never met before. So your tummy might, my tummy would go, my palms might be a bit sweaty. So I'd feel like this, but then what I would do is I would start to have thoughts on top of that. I'm feeling anxious, that means I'm useless. I'm feeling anxious, that means I'm a failure. And you build this kind of cascade of negative thoughts on top of I built this cascade of thoughts on top of a perfectly normal feeling. And all of a sudden I've gone from actually a level of feeling that a lot of people experience to having a complete meltdown.
But I think that's the thing with any I always say about, because I talk very openly about my depression and I've been like that for you, and I always say I think it's just how your brain's wired. Like you can't apologize for how your brain works, and that is just I am a massive overthinker. I'm a massive worrier of what people think of me, and I think you can have these like with depression you can have this a sad thought, but then it's the same with the anxiety. You then build on top of that.
Yes.
You know, so you start off with just a generally sad thought because that's what anyone would feel, to suddenly being spiraling into this depth of just wreckage almost, and it's just all your own perception and you're piling on. So I suppose it's the same with you kind of, that anxiety is at a level that you basically anyone would feel going into a room of strangers they don't know, just suddenly being like withering in a corner because you can't handle it, you know.
Exactly, because you feel like a failure.
Yeah. So how, going on from this, I'm just thinking as we're going, how would anyone sort of who isn't a sufferer of anxiety recognise someone, you know, someone that was going through like really bad anxiety issues? Is there any sort of thing to really recognise that, or?
I think people may look scared, so people may show like fearful facial expression. They may be a bit withdrawn. They might appear very sensitive to criticism. They might appear to overreact to a situation. And it's not always easy for somebody who is feeling anxious and nervous to actually articulate it. But very often I think if people do have the space to say, I'm feeling nervous, I'm feeling worried, I think sometimes that openness can de-escalate it. If somebody else notices it in a kind of a kind and enabling kind of way, it can sometimes help somebody feel better.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if I've had examples where I've sort of seen people, you know, because I'm just thinking of for a conversation I had with some friends not long ago, and them saying about how one in particular who said, you know, she went into a network and environment and, you know, ended up sort of crying in the toilets and just feeling very kind of trapped and weight on and that so someone with anxiety issues wouldn't necessarily air it there and then, they would shy away, would they? Yeah,
I guess it depends on the individual, but one thing I think that people can do is be honest and open about maybe if they're feeling a bit nervous in a situation. Somebody I spoke to who does public speaking, he told me that when he does public speaking, even though he does an awful lot, he still feels nervous. So that reassured me that the feeling I had was normal and human and just a part of caring about the situation and wanting to do a good job.
Well, that's what's because I'm fine with speaking now. I used to really dread it and hate it. I still get nervous, but I think, but a lot of people always say to me, oh, but you hold it together so well, you do. But again, that's the other flip side of perceptions, isn't it? You know, you're thinking, oh no, I've like mucked up on that bit, or oh no, I've kind of stumbled, or I watch myself back and kind of think, oh, how many times have I said basically, because that's my classic word, you know, everyone has like a word, don't they? And I look back and like cringe, but then other people sort of say, you nailed it, you did great. And I think kind of, you know, your perception of how you did is always that negative slant on it, whereas so I just we're our own worst enemies, really, aren't we?
Oh, hugely. What happens when I did my talk, basically I've
started you off now, sorry.
No, that's fine. I was on adrenaline and I used a lot of my body's adrenaline, a lot of my body's energy, all in that short space of time. So after the talk, I kind of had this deficit, this lack of energy. So what happened was my body energy shot down, my mood shot down, and I interpreted that really horrible feeling as I did badly on the talk. And I my rational brain knows that's not true. But
that kind of evil person in your head was saying I was awful.
Yes, and they felt real at that moment in time. So on stage, I held it together. Even when the microphone didn't work, even when I held it together really, really well. It was the second I got off stage that the process of like recovering my energy began, which was tricky. But actually, I feel like it's been a good investment because now it's left me in a position where I'm stronger. I'm doing a course at the moment at university where we're doing a little bit of presentation, speaking in front of the group. And I can really feel that my confidence has gone up and up and up and up. So it was an uncomfortable feeling at that moment in time, but the payoff is, really improved confidence now.
And what's your kind of, we talked about sort of the next goals on the next, obviously doing a TEDx talk is like huge, so
it's amazing.
Have you got any more goals, or are you just trying to reflect on this one for now?
No, I've got more goals. I've got a goal that is a little bit different. Again, this is a goal to try and build my resilience. So if it goes well, that'll be fantastic. If it doesn't, then never mind. It's a whole building experience. I'm going to apply to open mic comedy and just attempt to do a short set and see how that goes.
And why wouldn't that go well? That is awesome.
It's just
but again
fun.
You then said, like, picking up on that and saying, you then basically did, that defensive maneuver of setting the audience up so if you fail it isn't so bad, by saying
insurance.
if it goes well then that's if it doesn't. And I think that is just, sorry to pick up on that,
no,
but
that's fine.
that is, we all do it so much, don't we? That kind of, okay, if I tell people, when I speak at a network meeting or something like that, I nearly always, I would say sort of 90% of the time, I'll start with, oh, I'm really unprepared, so I'm sorry if this is really bad. I almost apologise and set people up to be disappointed. So, and that's almost my defence strategy. So if it doesn't, go well, I can kind of, oh, well, I warned you. So, it's almost that crazy, really, because it normally goes really well. And if I didn't sort of say that, then I pulled one woman up to a recent thing I went to, and she was a really amazing business. She was basically taught people how to be parents, the actual how to bits, which I always said, oh my, wouldn't, being a mum is the hardest job in the world. It would be so good to have a training course. You get training for, all other jobs, but you don't so much for being a mum. And then that's what she does. She basically goes in and shows you how to bath a baby, hold a baby, and it's first time parents, especially I think younger parents, that's ideal. But I think she started at saying, oh, well, if it doesn't work in a year, I'll do this, this and this. And I sort of said to her, but you're already setting yourself up for failure, because you need to believe that you're just gonna do it and it doesn't matter. And it's, when you do it, not if I do it, when I do it and when I make a success of it.
You're absolutely right, actually, because even saying, actually, I'd like to try and attempt some stand-up comedy, even saying that, I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm being so daring, even making this kind of statement, that it's, I don't know, even confessing it is like a step forward of like, oh, you know, bravery, really.
But again, I suppose you saying that, you're kind of, you've got the perceptions of whoever's watching this now or is going to watch it over the next few days or whatever. You're you know, I would be the same. You're almost saying, oh, okay, oh no, what will people think? What
I
will,
know.
you know, that already you're, without kind of fully acknowledging it, your anxiety is kicking in.
Yes.
I suppose that's a good way to explain it to people watching, because obviously from my point of view, I don't understand so much. Obviously having a mental illness myself, I understand from that perspective, but anxiety is something I don't really experience. So I suppose that's quite a good way of explaining it, really, by saying that you're, you know, you want to be really excited about this new thing you're going to do, but almost your stomach stops you, and kind of that feeling of, and so, you know, you're already running scared.
Always that feeling of almost being afraid of being seen as slightly arrogant, you know, almost being seen as because you know, I know I can make people laugh, I know I can do those things, but it almost goes against my programming to say, hey, I'm actually pretty good at something.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the thing, you know, if you ask people, oh, do you think I'm funny, they'd say, yeah, you're a scream, you're, you know. So but you again are putting those limitations on yourself, aren't you? You're going, like, what, you know. Speaking of comedy, actually, I think that's another tool that people use, isn't it? You know, I said about but that's, for me, comedy is a massive tool for hiding how I'm feeling.
It's a huge defense mechanism.
Yeah.
It's a huge way of diffusing, distracting. It's actually, there is an element of, hey, I can make you laugh, come on, you like me now, don't you? That kind of thing going on. But there's also, if you can make people laugh and make people happy, there's a buzz that is just so lovely.
Like, I literally crack jokes all day, every day, you know. I just come out with one-liners constantly. But I think for me as well, in those sort of stressful situations, it breaks that tension. But I have noticed I do use it, which is really bad. I use it as a kind of, if I laugh about me first, then if someone else picks up on something that, like, you know, if I'm having a bad hair day, for example, you know, which is most days, there you go, I then did it, which is most days. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of without even thinking then, but it's kind of that, you know, if I point out that, okay, you know, what do you think of my hair today? It's not the best. Do you know what I mean? Then I'm already setting people up so they're not gonna be nasty to me.
Yeah. Whereas actually what you're doing is the same as what I do, is that my perception of how my hair looks, I like my hair the first day I wash it, when it's properly new, curly, clean, shiny. When it slightly deviates from that perfection, I like notice it. But I imagine other people don't really.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't know. Just lately, I think whether us a lot of I've been looking into a lot of body confidence stuff and that sort of thing lately. I went to see a film called Embrace, which is really amazing, by this Australian woman. She went like around the world talking about women and their bodies, and you know, what they saw as their imperfections. And I think that is the thing. Like, I've started so much looking at others and going, actually she's really beautiful, but I bet she's worried about, she's probably worried about this, that and the other. And I think it's weird when you start looking at it more objectively, and actually, it doesn't really matter. Like it's kind of that, those perceptions, whether it's about your actions, or it's about the way you look, or it's about how you parent, or what, does it all really matter, I suppose.
Well, I mean, have you heard of the supermodel Claudia Schiffer?
Yeah.
She's like a goddess, she is just the image of perfection. Yet if what I hear is correct, she will not have her feet photographed.
Wow.
Because she views her feet as so ugly, she will not have them in a picture.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah,
and feet seems such a it's not such a big deal. I suppose to me, my feet aren't a big deal.
No, but to her, they if what I've heard is true, it's so important to her that she forgets, or she seems to forget how beautiful she is.
But again, it's that same situation whereby, as yourself, you're always focusing on those negative things, whatever it may be, isn't it? So I'm just trying to think in terms of, I named this show How to Talk Openly About These Things, because obviously when Pookie did her talk, hers was very much focused on how to recognise someone, and to actually not keep it to yourself, and I suppose in terms of looking specifically for anxiety, but generally mental health situations as a whole. What are your thoughts then on how to approach someone who you think has got some sort of mental health problem or anxiety issues or whatnot? What would you,
I think you approach
would you rather people talk to you really upfront about it, how we are now, or just kind of ignore it?
I guess it really depends on the context, because I guess there's going to be some moments where somebody is working really hard to keep it together for that 5 minutes. So I guess it's not a question of ignoring it, but a question of choosing your moment. So, but it's really important to give somebody space to say, how are you today? How are you feeling? And actually listen, and actually not try and, one of the things that I hear over and over again, not try and solve the problem, but just hear where somebody's at and not judge where they're at.
Yeah, because I suppose that is the fine line, is kind of being able to say, I'm thinking of it from a suicidal perspective as well, being able to say to someone, okay, I think that you're having a problem. Do you want to talk about it? Reaching that, almost that olive branch of saying, look, I'm here if you need me, or we can find someone else to talk to about a specific issue if you need it. But then you kind of, there's that fine line between that and sort of saying, well, what you need to do is just pull it together, and you need to think of your children. I had a situation when my friend commit suicide last year. A lot of people sort of said, oh, well, it's really unfair because she left her family behind, she left her children behind. And I sort of said, okay, that's your opinion, but what right have you got to air that opinion when you don't know what she's been through? From someone who's suffered from depression and had thoughts of leaving the world, I in the situation I was at that time, the mindset I was at that time, I honestly believe that that would be the best for my husband and my children, for me not to be here. You know, to try and explain that to someone who hasn't had those thoughts is really difficult, because, you know, and I thought, you can't judge someone. I honestly think taking your own life is probably the bravest thing you could do. It's not the answer, by my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to take your own life is actually, to be able to actually cross that threshold must be incredibly scary and incredibly, you know, it's, so I don't think anyone can, it's about not judging that situation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about recognizing that for somebody to do that, there must have been an excruciating level of pain. And I've had those voices, the world would be better off without you kind of narrative going on. I think probably a lot of people have. And there are moments like 3 a.m. where they feel real, they feel big, they don't feel like what somebody calls it, which is a short-term, a long-term problem to a temporary. It's a temporary problem, those feelings, but suicide is a long-term, it's too long a term solution for it. I've kind of got that phrase in a muddle there, so I apologise about that.
No, I know what you mean. It's kind of, I'm just thinking as well as that kind of, we were talking about when you get a small feeling and it then builds and builds and builds.
Yeah.
I suppose that is what, you know, to that level of thoughts are, isn't it? You know, you start off with oh, okay, I did really rubbish at that assignment or that speech or whatever, and then, you know, those negative kick in and build and build and build to the point where the world is literally, you know, the world's better off without you, because that, and when you actually look at it from the outside and go, okay, I got to that point because you know, something really small didn't work out, it's kind of laughable, really, you know, from an outsider, but to you, because you've built that up and that's your, you know, again, the way your brain's wired, it's not silly, because it's actually
it's real for you.
It's a health issue. Yeah.
It's so real. I mean, I've come to the conclusion that for me, suicidal thoughts are almost like my brain's emergency exit. So every so often my brain will go, do I still have that emergency exit? Yeah, it's still there. Okay. It's like my brain does a health and safety check and it goes, yes, that's an option, but we're not going to do that. Okay. Back to normal.
I suppose it goes back to that kind of, like, what was it, the fight or flight kind of strategy you said about, you know, and that, you know, that is the that kind of exit strategy, whereby if the positive things you're looking at don't go well, you think, oh, I've got that to fall back on, you know, which, to put it like that, makes it seem really light-hearted, which it isn't at all, but it's kind of that your brain saying, okay, well, I thought, oh yay, this is a Monday, let's go get the week, and by Friday, you know, everything's just gone wrong, and it's just, let's jump out of the plane and be done with it, you know.
Or for me, one thing that if I'm feeling particularly tired or hungry, then those feelings in me can mimic anxiety, so I can get like really, really worried and think, actually, I've not had anything to eat today. And you've got the solution. You have something to eat. Blood sugar.
I suppose that goes on to also thinking about your own well-being and kind of thinking of making sure that you are in tune with what you're your body needs. I collapsed last week and had a really horrendous week, and it was just purely because I was so tired, and the kids had me up, and obviously had not been eating right because I've been tired, so I'd sort of, and I think I must have had a virus, but I wasn't listening to my body. I didn't stop. And I think it's the same, listening to your body and listening to your brain. If you're having one of those down times, or you're hormonal because it's time of the month, or you're whatnot, you need to kind of listen to yourself and say, okay, I won't attempt to do that big project tonight, or I won't attempt to, and to be a bit more easy on yourself, and not put yourself in those scary situations. Like, I know you said before that you need to push yourself, and you do, don't you? But there's times where actually it's not fair to make yourself push yourself when you're going through crappy times. It's better to not go to that room full of strangers than go and then end up crying in the toilet.
Well, if you overtrain a muscle, you'll end up with an injury. If you don't give your muscle that rest in between training, you'll end up with an injury. So I do push myself to do things, but it's also really important to build in sort of rest and recovery and time with friends and time in safe spaces, and times where I'm not pushing myself, to enable me to keep going.
Yeah. And I suppose that's the thing, like, you couldn't do TEDx every day for a week, because that would have just, it's just too much, isn't it? You need to kind of listen to your brain and the way you're feeling, and kind of really react to that, and to then go on to that next step in your journey, I suppose.
Exactly. If I did something like that every day, something as high demand, high adrenaline every day, I would flunk out. I would not do very well.
Yeah, it's just, I'm exhausted just thinking about it, actually. It's kind of that, can you imagine doing something like that, getting up on stage for like some people do it, and I don't know how they do it, but I
suppose they build a tolerance to it. But they wouldn't start off doing it every day. I guess they would build up to it. Yeah,
definitely. Right, I think looking at the time, we're coming close to the end of the hour. I just kind of want to round up. It's been we could go on and on, I think, because it's a really interesting conversation. I'll try and get Pookie back on, and we'll kind of get together again, because it would be good to kind of have her input, and actually
she's amazing. She's absolutely incredible.
She has I've viewed a couple of her YouTube videos, and if anyone's watching, just search what's her last name? I want to say Kingsmill, but it's not Kingsmill, is it? That's the bread.
Ricky, is it Knightsmith?
Knightsmith, yeah, there we go. I don't know where I got Kingsmill from. That was I'm just obviously thinking of food. I did have cheese on toast for tea, so maybe that's that. But
maybe you're hungry.
Yeah, maybe. So if anyone wants to search her online and have a look at her, there's a couple of talks and stuff online which are really amazing. So I did have a look at those earlier, but it'd be good to have her on for perspective. But I suppose to round things up, then what have we touched upon this evening? We've said about those negative, niggly, nasty thoughts that we have about ourselves because of like absolutely stupid perceptions of what other people think. So maybe just to round up, that is kind of the message that we want to give people, is that if they are suffering from anxiety or any mental health, firstly recognize it and sort of take ownership of it. I realised while I was saying that we haven't mentioned your bunny, which we need to mention. We do, we do.
Another time.
Yes. Yes.
Another time I'll bring him on.
Oh, good. But just explain that just briefly. Everyone, people who are watching are probably literally like, what is she on about?
Yeah. Okay. To illustrate me making friends with my anxiety, so that anxiety becomes something that's not core to my identity. So it's something I can have a conversation with. That might sound a little bit crazy. I used a small soft toy bunny to illustrate it during my TED talk. And I must admit that did cause me a huge amount of anxiety of producing a small soft toy to like 450 grown-ups. That was fun
I
though.
loved it. It was completely on my wavelength.
Oh, it was brilliant. I got the I didn't know how people would react. I had no idea how people would react to this. But they reacted so well. It was so lovely. So we'll do something in the future, and I'll bring my BFF on.
Does it have a name?
BFF.
Oh, okay. We've got plenty of soft toys in our house. They're all sorts of names. I can't keep up with it.
It gets complicated. No, he is my BFF.
Yeah.
My best fallible friend. Forgot to say that, didn't I?
And I think that is the thing, isn't it? It's about kind of taking that ownership, you know, of what you got going on, being able to talk about it openly to people who will just listen and not give opinions or tell you about, you know, it's good to share experiences, but not overshadow someone else's, you know, problem with your problem, that, you know, your problem's 10 times worse because this happened and that happened. It's kind of about sharing and owning it, I suppose.
Well, when I produced my BFF, my line was, I'm not ashamed of my anxiety. So I think it's something that people shouldn't feel that anxiety is a shameful secret. They shouldn't feel it makes them a bad person. They shouldn't, you know, there's no, being free from that shame is a wonderful thing.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, saying it is about breaking that stigma of mental health, because even though mental health issues are talked about so much more now, we're still a long way to go. You know, people are still ashamed and embarrassed, and you know, I've had people sort of say, I'm so glad you said that you're on antidepressants because I am too. And do you know what I mean? That kind of that, because people, they label themselves as this, you know, oh, I must be like completely nuts, or, you know, an insane pet or whatnot. And they kind of, again, that's a whole perception thing, isn't it? It's a whole,
Hugely.
You know, if you, you know, you were on stage, so I think there's about 500 people there. And literally you were saying, yeah, I've owned it. This is me, and I'm not ashamed. And I think more people need to do that and just literally be like, this is the issue, and talk about it, you know.
I love my favorite way of putting it is, it's kind of, sometimes it's okay not to be okay. I love that.
Yeah. And it's surprising how many people, when you do start talking, and then other people talk, and then other people talk, and it's amazing how much you have in common with people. And a lot of people are going through issues behind closed doors and they won't talk about it. So I suppose the main message, we're now coming to the end of the hour, but the main message for anyone who's watching now or on replay later on is that if you are going through anything at all, don't be ashamed about it. Just talk about it. You know, anyone that will listen or you feel safe talking to, you know, that's the first step, isn't it? And you'll be surprised how many are going through something similar.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on, Vicky, and thank you so much for dealing with it. I'll just show everybody. You're not boring, by the way, you know, it might be the drone of my voice, but look.
Oh, bless
sweaty.
her.
She's all sweaty and just absolutely sparked out, bless her heart. So the land of Nod. Yeah. So
I feel like we ought to do a Listen with Mother ending.
Yes, they're so cute. They're so cute when they sleep, aren't they? Not like that all the time, as we saw earlier, but thank you so much for putting up.
No problem.
she's
gorgeous.
She's a future woman, you know. She's it's my fault for I'm trying to make her grow up into this sort of strong, independent woman, and at the moment, being 5, it's backfiring on me slightly, but
think about the future. She will be unstoppable. She will be an unstoppable woman.
I suppose the hope is that seeing this sort of thing, you know, we obviously said we wanted to keep it a bit more light-hearted than we probably would have with young ears listening, because obviously, you know, there is a sort of line. But, you know, I think it's important that youngsters hear things, you know, hear about things being talked about in real life, because hopefully by the time she grows into a woman, the stigma won't be there.
I hope so.
I hope so. Let's end it there.
And let's keep working towards that. Take care.
Definitely. Awesome. You're a star, Vicky. It's lovely to have you on. Your first live. You did amazing. See, you forgot that anyone was even watching. You had a few on there. But feel free to share it about everybody. And I will just let you know that the next show will be on the 2nd of July. I cannot believe that it's going to be July. I can't believe we're in June. And it's all about the harsh truths of related to eating disorders, so that's going to be quite a heavy topic as well. But we've got a lady who struggled massively with anorexia, Tiffany, who's going to be joining us and talking about being inside the head of a survivor. So that'll be quite an incredible show, so hopefully I'll see you then.
Cool.
And thank you so much again, Vicky.
No problem. Take care of yourself. Bye. Take care.
That comedy, I can't wait to see that. Wait to see you on stage.
Be amazing.
See you later. See you later. Take care. Bye.